It's gonna be good. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be better. I can't wait. Making my move. Live for the day. Sing like a bird. Fly like a plane. Come spill with me. Jenny D.
Hello, my beautiful people. It's me, Jenny D from Spill With Me, Jenny D podcast. I am so excited to have my guest here today. I have Martine Marino, and I just want to let you know and thank you, Martine, for this episode. It's sponsored by NovaCare Rehabilitation. So thank you so much for sponsoring this. And this is such an important topic about youth sports and rehabilitation. But first, we're going to talk to Martine about her. So introduce yourself to the listeners and the viewers.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm
this
so
is
excited.
Yeah, so I'm a physical therapist. I have been for, 25 years almost. I can't believe that.
And you're only 30.
Right, I know. Brainchild. Yeah, I did my undergrad at Pitt and then stayed in Pittsburgh, went to Chatham. And I have worked in all different kinds of settings, but for the last 24 years, it's been in outpatient orthopedics.
Oh, really?
And I have worked with kids as young as 10 and, collegiate, high school, even some professional athletes, throughout the course of my career. And it's a lot of fun. It's a great group to work with.
What made you think about this path?
Well, that's a long story.
Oh, but we got time.
The condensed version. The condensed version. I knew I wanted to do something in the medical field, but I actually started in pharmacy. But I didn't want to do research. I didn't want to, work behind a counter. I didn't want to go to med school for 17 years.
I get it.
So I started volunteering in PT, and I was like, "This is great. I'm working with actual people." And, helping them reach their physical
goals. Isn't that such a satisfaction?
It really is. I mean,
people come in with like, what do you say to them? Like, you're like, hey, okay, well, you really got to work on this, your joints or this or stretch.
Yeah, patient education is huge. I feel like if somebody knows why they're doing something, they're more likely to be compliant. That's the one drawback about physical therapy. I can't do the work for them. I have to talk them into.
They have homework to do.
Yes, they have to be compliant. They have to do it themselves. I can't make them stronger. I can show them what they need to do. And sometimes I can, work out some knots and do some adjustments and whatnot, but I can't.
I got a knot in my neck right now.
Yes,
I could go for a little massage.
I don't think I have magic unicorn dust. I just sprinkle it and you're fine. I wish.
Yeah.
I wish. But it's very rewarding, to see these people, because again, I don't just treat athletes. I treat, weekend warriors and grandma and grandpa and everybody. So, just seeing them hit their goals and get back to that functional level.
What have you seen with the children nowadays with sports? Because I don't know if it was like this before when you first started. Did you see a lot of young kids? Or with these youth sports now, are you seeing more young kids?
So yeah, they're getting younger and younger because.
But wait, you know what? Do you understand? Do you see soccer? They're playing at 4.
Oh, well, yes, they're playing at 4, but it's not even so much when you start, it's when you specialize. And single sports specialization is on the rise, despite the research that says it's not good. ACL tears are up 400% the last.
Oh my gosh.
So these kids are bigger, faster, and stronger, but the injuries are going up. And a lot of that does point to these, year-round single sports. Nothing has a season anymore,
It's so true.
And it's hard to get the back work in, the core strengthening, the stretching, all the maintenance, if you're always playing. And I mean, I get patients in that are like, okay, you're injured, but she's on 2 different teams or he's on 2 different teams. And trust me, my kids are, they play a lot of different sports and a lot of different teams and whatnot. So then it's like, okay, well, are we just putting a Band-Aid on this and getting them through the season, or do we want them to actually, get better? And I think that is one of the things that is leading to re-injury, is that first injury was never fully rehabbed.
It's so true, right?
And a lot of time, and
because they want to get back in the game. They don't want to miss the game.
And understandably, I mean, these seasons are short, well, like the school seasons are short. So yes, obviously, you want them to get back on the field as quickly as possible. But if they go back too soon, they can either re-injure or injure something else, or it becomes a nagging injury where, in the off season, they're okay. And then as soon as they go back, it comes back because they never really address.
Even worse though, right?
Yeah, sometimes worse. Sometimes it's just, nagging. Because rest is a part of it a lot of times, especially with the overuse injuries. But rest isn't the only thing sometimes. I mean, you have to fix the problem. If rest is going to do the trick, a week or two of rest will do the trick.
Right.
And
not
if it doesn't,
a cortisone shot, right?
Well, no, definitely not a cortisone shot.
I did too.
I
don't like it. It hurt.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a place for cortisone, but
because a lot of the kids want something fast. Like you got to cure me now. You got to fix me now. I need to get in that game.
Right. And if you're a professional athlete and that's your job and you're only going to play for so many more years, then and you're getting paid millions, like it makes sense. Sure, shoot me up, send me back in. Yeah. But if you're looking at a high school student, you have to really think about the implications, down the road. And unfortunately, a lot of coaches, and not all of them, there's some excellent coaches. I mean, we've been very blessed with some of the coaches that we've had.
Especially in our community.
Yeah, like having the kids' interest and longevity at heart. But a lot of them are no, they want to win and, whatever that takes. So, but that knee has to last that kid their whole life, or that shoulder, or that whatever, and a lot of times too, the doctor will clear them, like, okay, you're clear. And they think that means, oh, well, I'm just going to jump back into, whatever that was at.
That is so true. I didn't even think about that.
That is sometimes where the problem is, because if you play through fatigue, you are 36 times more likely to get injured. And that is part of like getting back into the sport. So it's depending on what kind of rehab you had, determines like where your level is getting back, to that level. Because it's not just, okay, the ligament is healed or the tendon is healed or the structure is healed. It's, neurologically, do your muscles know what they're supposed to do again? Do they have the endurance to do what they're supposed to do again? Do you have the agility and some of the things that you may have lost from being immobilized or just out of the game? We see this too with concussion. There's actually a new statistic out that there's an increased risk of ACL tears after concussion, and they're trying to figure out. They're trying to figure out what that correlation is.
Right.
But it could be, that person was out for a while, and it was their head, so they're doing all their head stuff. But were they working on the rest of their body?
Yes.
So
in football, what's the worst sport that you see?
So the number one, not so much that I see, but in the research, the number one sport in males for both for both ACL and concussion is football. This is not a big shocker.
My son plays football.
I know. For girls, it's soccer.
Oh, you know what? I've heard this. And now I thought I had a couple years ago, Merrill Hodge, and he talked about brainwashed concussions. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, one of the number one sports is women's basketball. That was back then, but that's where you found out there was a lot of concussions from that. Yeah. I think basketball is like fourth on the list. Yeah, it's up there.
It's up there. It's like definitely top 5.
Baseball's not too bad.
Baseball's not bad for concussion.
You're not hitting each
or ACL. It's actually, now you're looking at, shoulder and elbow issues.
That's true. You're throwing a lot. And
kids that play competitive baseball more than 8 months out of the year are 5 times more likely to have shoulder and or elbow surgery. Again, these are not guarantees.
Right.
Doesn't mean
this is a study.
And there are things you can do to help prevent that. There are reasons for those statistics, but, they're just statistics. You don't have to become a statistic.
That's true.
And we'll talk a little bit about how to try to prevent some of these things. So, I mean, there's the sports injuries are broken into two major categories, traumatic and non-traumatic.
Oh, really?
And there's only so much you can do about the traumatic. If you're running into another person, or, you're in a contact sport, the chances of something traumatic happening are just going to happen. Doesn't matter. It's just, certain forces going through certain tissues are just,
you got to play the hardest. I mean, that's the whole reason.
Non-traumatic, you have a little more control over, because these are the overuse injuries. These are the overtraining injuries. These you can actually screen for some of them, or you can look at their training program. And there are factors that you can control that can have a positive effect. For example, nutrition. You have control over that.
That's true.
Sleep. You have control over that. Muscle imbalances, which is, weakness versus tightness versus, those things you can work on in the off season, or even during the season. You have to do it.
Like what, honey, for instance?
So, for example, sometimes it's stretching, a lot of times it's strengthening. So let's go back to the ACL, since that's like the dreaded, injury. And it's dreaded because it's such a long rehab, and you can't really shorten it. They tried to, back in the 90s, they did an accelerated rehab, and the re-tear rate was very high, because they were just going, you can only...
Like putting a Band-Aid on it.
You can only heal so fast. Even if you're a fast healer, you're only going to heal so fast, And there are certain factors that are going to affect how fast you do or don't heal. But, with ACL, for example, a lot of tears in women, especially non-traumatic ones, are due to hip weakness, because your ACL is deep in your knee, and it holds the bottom bone, your tibia, your shin bone, from going too far forward. Okay. So when you plant or you go to change position, there's a certain amount of force that goes through your leg. Wow. So your hip, knee, and ankle are all in the same chain. And if your hip is weak and your knee dips in too much, and then you change direction too quickly, that ligament will tear.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's
like pivoting in basketball.
It's cutting, pivoting.
Yes.
That quick change. And you've seen it in football too. That would be like, the guy's running and all of a sudden, it just pops. Or skiing, is another sport where you see that. So however, if that girl's hips and ankles were stronger, if she had good control of her single limb movement, that is less likely to happen. Much less likely.
So you think weight training, maybe?
Very targeted weight training. I'm talking small stabilizing muscles that most people don't even know exist.
Oh my God.
So, and I see it with runners a lot too.
Right.
So this is like your functional strength. This is not, I'm going to the gym and I'm doing the leg press and I'm squatting and I'm lunging. Because that's the other thing too. Some of these kids they're going and they're doing all these things and their form is terrible. And they can't, because they don't have the stabilizers or the stability to control the movement, and they're just worried about how much can I squat and how much can I lift.
Oh, that's so true.
And then they come in and I'm looking at them and the knee's going this way and the ankle's going that way, and it's like, whoa, put the weights down. You can't even do, so we start from the beginning and just look at movement patterns. Are they moving properly? Same thing, the shoulder, big one with like foot or baseball players, the rotator cuff, but not even just the rotator cuff. The shoulder stabilizers is usually the culprit, because at least most of the kids do the band work, but the shoulder blade is doing all kinds of things, and they're hiking the shoulder, and the mechanics are off, or their pecs are too tight because they do too much
of this way,
and they're not stretching. So when I say muscle imbalance, that's what we're looking for. Like, is there a balance between front and back? Is there a balance in flexibility versus stability? Because too much flexibility, which is, so if we're treating dancers and cheerleaders, then we start kind of seeing the other end of the spectrum where they have too much mobility and not enough strength to stabilize.
I've never even thought about that.
Yeah. So each sport, each athlete has a different, kind of set of things that we need to really look at. We have a really cool thing at the clinic called the Dorsa V, and it is wearable movement sensors. So we put these sensors on the person.
God, I need to bring my son in.
Yes, it's very neat. And it can measure their actual, because core strength is hard to measure.
Right.
So, we put them in a plank and it can measure to the degree how stable they are.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, it's neat.
Put me in a plank.
We can do like single leg tests. So we can see, are their limbs symmetrical, or are they favoring one leg, or, so this is sort of like a pre-screening. We could take a look at them and say, okay, you need to work on your hip strength. We're going to give you these exercises to help prevent these non-traumatic overuse type of injuries.
Yes.
And then if we do have a patient that is in with an injury, I can test them. So when the doctor says you're clear, I say, we're going to see first how clear you are, and we'll get them on this test and we'll see, okay, yes, your risk of injury is now mild. So it's safe for you to go back. And sometimes we help the doctor make that recommendation because, again, there's certain things you can test, but it's hard to really quantify.
Right. You don't
know. So it's neat. We have a running analysis as well. So we do that for our distance runners. And
it's like on a treadmill.
Yeah.
And they can put something on them.
Yep. We can see their cadence. We can see their ground reaction forces, their initial peak acceleration.
I cannot believe it, but ACLs are like 400 times up.
Yeah.
Because of all, if you think about it, all the sports that we're doing, do you think it's because that the kids' bones are still growing?
Well, that this age group, that's one of the reasons that this age group.
Which age group?
Well, between 14 and 19, but it's specifically between 16 and 19 is the highest risk of injury. Now, is that because they're getting into a higher level of competition? Is it because that is really where, you do see a lot of growth spurts and whatnot? But personally, between 12 and 17 in my practice is where we really see that, because that's where puberty's coming.
Yeah.
So a lot of times their bones will grow so fast, their muscles and ligaments haven't had a chance to catch up physically and neurologically.
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
So, their coordination, their proprioception, all those types of things have to come together as well. So, growing pains is one thing, but also being able.
How do you know the difference between growing pains and you're actually having a pain?
Well, growing pains are a little more generalized, but the growing pains can actually have an injury associated. Like if you've heard of Sever's disease or Severs, however you want to pronounce it, that's with the growth plate in the heel. So it's basically an irritation of the growth plate in the heel because the muscle is pulling so much on it that it's causing irritation there. And you can have knees are another one, like where the quadricep attaches to the knee. You can get tendonitis there because the bone grew so fast, and now that there's so much tension on the attachment site. Sometimes it's called jumper's knee. You see it a lot.
What do you do for that?
Well, again, we take a look and see, every patient gets evaluated because even though the diagnosis might be the same, the causes might be a little bit different. So we check their flexibility. We check their strength everywhere: hips, knees, ankles, core. If it's lower body, obviously upper body, the whole thing: shoulder blade, neck, all that. And then we check their strength and their movement patterns, and then we see where the deficits are, and then we correct them. So usually it's a combination of
perfect for athletes to go to.
Oh yeah,
NovaCare.
Well, or any qualified PT, but they should have some experience working with athletes, because it is a little bit different than working with grandma and grandpa, or somebody who's just like a weekend warrior. These kids, not only, are they working at a higher level, but there's a certain amount of psychology you have to use with them as well, And unfortunately, a lot of these athletes, their identity is, I'm an athlete, I'm a baseball player.
Yeah, don't tell me any bad news.
So you have to take that into consideration as well when you're treating them, because this is not just a physical blow. This is their social life. This is, they're part of their identity. This could be, in some cases, scholarships and
they want the future
and so on. So, you definitely, and again, that is where you have to educate them on the healing time, the restrictions,
the rest,
the rest, how, that rest is, I like to call it relative rest, because we try to keep them as active as possible and doing as many things as they safely can without re-injuring or making the situation worse. especially my runners. I mean, the last thing you want to tell them is you can't run.
Oh.
So I will do everything in my power, unless it's a stress fracture or some sort of bony pathology. We will try to find a way to keep them
Is it
running.
a lot with runners? Is it more of like the feet and the ankles? Or
We see more knees and ankles with runners, but certainly you can have hip and back pain as well. And that even with the cross country kids, a lot of times they're not doing enough over the summer, and then cross country hits in the fall, and all of a sudden they're running 5-6 days a week.
Oh.
Yeah, multiple miles a day.
Nice.
Or when they go from middle school to high school, because the distance increases. So, they were used to a certain distance. Now it's significantly higher. So anytime an athlete, increases, whether it's the load or the frequency or whatever, that's when you run into trouble, because every tissue has a breaking point.
Right.
In every person, so a lot of times people think, oh, they're kids, they'll just bounce back. I mean, I've even had physicians that are like, oh, you don't need PT, you're 12, it's fine, you'll heal. And they will, but why not just make sure, just have an eval to make sure everything looks good? Because if it isn't 100%, now you're going to wind up, I just the other day I had a guy, he's middle-aged now, but he's a runner and he's having hip problems. And we were going over squatting technique, and he kept falling over, and I'm like, what are you doing? And I realized his ankle wasn't bending enough for him to squat properly.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, what's going on with your ankle? And he's like, oh, I hurt that 15 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
So
you noticed that right away.
And so he was, younger when it happened, but it never got better, even though he doesn't have pain in it, and it doesn't bother, so a lot of people think, well, it doesn't hurt, so it's fine. And to some extent, yes, but
if it's
biomechanically, if it's part of the chain and it's not working properly, then the other parts of the chain are going to have to compromise for that. And a lot of times it's subtle, and you won't notice it and until, something else gets hurt somewhere else. And that goes back to the whole re-injury thing with kids going back too soon is, these kids they're tough. They'll push through it, they'll get it done, but, not without, potential damage to other muscles, joints, etc. And that plays into the whole longevity piece,
Right. And sometimes the kids don't tell their parents because, like you said, this is something that they love. And oh my God, if you take that away from them, I mean, they would feel like, oh my gosh,
Right. Oh, yeah.
My life, this is my life, but your body, you only have one body.
Right. And when you're young, you don't really, you don't think about that. You're like, oh, I'm young.
I'm just going to play.
I'm just going to
yeah. So we didn't have this. Like, I played volleyball. So I was captain.
I was volleyball too.
Oh, yeah. I love volleyball was my favorite. I played from 6th grade all the way to 12th grade. But it was just in the season. Like, we played in the season. We wore our knee pads and stuff like that. And then, nowadays, like, this has been happening for I don't even know how many years, but my knees, it's really hard for me to do squats and stuff. And I keep saying, it's because I was a volleyball player. But it's arthritis. So, you get to a point. When do you think you get like arthritis?
Oh, you can get arthritis at any age.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like kids could?
All arthritis is a wearing away of the cartilage. Let me specify. Osteoarthritis, which is the common one.
Right.
So most people over the age of 30 have arthritis somewhere. But arthritis doesn't always have to mean debilitation and or pain. So, I mean, if your knees hurt and you can't squat, like, you should come in and see me.
I know, but I thought it was a lost cause for me.
No. I mean,
I'm like, wow, I have arthritis. I can't do it.
No. I mean, nobody's a lost cause until you've gone through all of the options. I mean, I have had people come in and I'm with x-rays and MRIs that even I'm like, oh, I don't know about this one. And they do great, and now again, that takes compliance and it takes, doing what you're told. And again, I think that is one of the more challenging pieces of treating the high school athletes versus the college and the professional athletes.
Right.
The professional athletes, that's their job. So they will do whatever you tell them. It's great. But the high school athletes are like, so
they don't listen.
My children included.
Yeah. They all of our children.
Yeah. So, you really have to try and somehow get through to them to make them understand that, like, this this piece is just as important as your pitching lessons, as your hitting lessons, as your, like, if you don't have the materials, if you don't have the strength and the coordination and the motion available, then you can have the best coach in the world. You can go to as many lessons as you want. Like, you've got to have the tools to get the job done. And that is a hard concept. And I get
it's a hard conversation to have.
I get it. Yeah, they're not getting paid millions to do it.
But
and
they love
homework.
it. And that's like their big thing. Like, they're like, I just want to do my sport.
Well, and it's not the fun stuff either. I mean, my exercises are boring. I'm not going to lie. I've got kids. I know you got to do it this way. You got to concentrate. A lot of it is mental too, because it's like, no, you can't. You got to keep that shoulder down. You got to, otherwise you're just perpetuating abnormal movement patterns, which is pointless, which is why I'm not a fan of, well, I just got these exercises off of YouTube or TikTok. Well, great. They're not bad exercises, but you're doing them wrong, because a lot of times you can't tell.
So
it's not even their fault. Like, people, you're watching them do their thing. You're not watching yourself. And even if you were, you wouldn't know what to watch for, because these are like really specific, things that you have to target. And, that's one of the nice things about where I work. Like, we're busy, but we're not so busy that we're like, okay,
we have a waiting list.
Go do your exercises. I'll see you. It's like, well, God knows what they're doing in there if you're not watching them, or at least until you know that they know what they're doing.
So how does an athlete, student athlete, how do they know when it's time to go see you?
If something does not resolve with rest within a week or two, then you haven't, then you're injured. Then if you feel like, you cannot perform at 100% without pain, during or after, it's the after piece that I think people forget about. So there's good pain and bad pain, Good pain is like your muscle soreness, like you worked out.
Yeah, right. I feel like that's
more generalized usually. It can be intense. We've all had a leg day that's like, been like, oh my God. Okay. But, bad pain doesn't stop when you stop, and a lot of times gets worse. Oof. And it's generally sharp, not always, but it can be sharp, and it's getting into those severe ranges where you start to alter your movement, whether it be limping, whether it be, using your trunk to move a little bit more.
You're compensating.
So if you rest and the pain goes away, and then you go back to your activity and it comes back, you're injured. Like, it's not
healed, yeah.
Or if the pain gets better, but you feel like you are not able to perform at the same level, then chances are there's probably some residual things that need to be addressed,
Right.
So in my opinion, it never hurts to get evaluated. Right. I mean, if you come in and you're like, and a lot of my former patients now, they will do this because they know, like, nip it in the butt early.
Right.
So, like, especially my runners. Our runners are like, I'm coming in.
I'm here.
Sure. Because they don't want to be, they don't want to be out, know. So they will come in and they'll just get an evaluation and take a look, make sure everything looks good. I was in a cast for whatever. Doc says I don't need PT, but, I want to just make sure everything looks good. And if you look good, you look good. I'm going to discharge you. I'm not going to have you come in if you don't need to.
True.
And it's covered by insurance.
I was just going to ask you, do you have to have a doctor recommend you?
So in the state of Pennsylvania, if your insurance, write this down. If your insurance is not federally funded, meaning you don't work for the government, it's not Medicare, it's not Medicaid, it's none of, it's like whatever, Blue Cross or whatever, you can see a direct access certified PT without a script. Ooh. So, and most of them in outpatient now, we have our direct access certification, but you'd want to, find out when you call.
Right.
And then you can come in without a script. And it's still covered by insurance.
Oh, that's
nice. We can treat up to 30 days without a prescription. So if there is an injury and we do need to see you past 30 days, then we just send your evaluation to your doctor.
Right.
And they sign off on it usually.
Oh, that's right. Because I think that's a lot of people hesitant. They're like, I can't afford to do PT, so I'm just going to learn off of that.
Right. And again,
but insurance covers it.
Insurance covers it. And even though it can still be expensive, I mean, there's still copays and deductibles and all that kind of thing. But that's something you can also discuss with your therapist. At least have them put you on a program. Come for a couple visits, make sure you're doing the exercises properly, make sure you're doing the right exercises, and then do them at home, maybe coming in a couple weeks to make sure everything looks good. I mean, we work with people, we understand, things are expensive now.
Oh yeah. And I feel so stupid because I'm sitting here like, oh, well, I just have knee pain because, I'm older and, it's just arthritis and there's nothing I can do. I mean, I literally, when I walk down steps or walk up steps, I have such a hard time with my knees.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed, my knees are kind of like turning in a little bit. Now, I was born with club feet, so I don't know if that had anything to do. Now that I feel like I'm starting to feel that. And I went to my chiropractor friend, and my one leg, this leg, was longer than the other leg. So he adjusted me. I'm like, what is going on with my body?
Well, and it's pretty common too. I mean, we do the same thing with hip adjustments and back adjustments if needed. But, again, that is not fixing the problem long term.
Right.
Why do they need to be adjusted? Usually it's a muscle imbalance like we talked about.
Right.
Something's tight, something's weak. Your movement patterns are causing that.
You got to listen to your body.
Yeah. Yeah. And knee pain and all those types of things. I mean, this is not exactly, athlete specific. This is just people in general.
Right.
The last thing you want to do is start checking things off your list that you can no longer do.
Right.
Like, oh, well, it hurts when I squat, so I'm just not going to squat anymore. Squatting's very important for a lot of different things,
Right.
And it's even the same thing with kids. If they're hurt all the time, they're not going to want to play. It's not fun.
It's not fun anymore.
I mean, so that's where a lot of the overuse turns into burnout.
Right.
Because the game's not fun anymore if you're icing, before and after, and you're, you feel like you're 90 getting out of bed. And
Oh, yeah.
again,
I feel
we
like
think,
that.
they're kids, so they can just, spring out of bed and just, recover. And granted, they do a lot faster than we would,
Right.
but, they're not, they can still be injured. They still need, certain things.
I think, talking about, we don't have to get into it, but when you, as men and women, our hormonal changes as we get older, I just thought that was part of the process. My joints hurt. I thought I had carpal tunnel. And then when I was going to go see the guy, I canceled because I'm like, it doesn't hurt anymore. But I knew that was, the menopause thing and stuff like that.
And the hormones could play a huge part, and I'm sure you've talked about this on your Monday specials. That, estrogen is an anti-inflammatory. It's a natural anti-inflammatory.
I know. Like, these are so many things that I'm learning. And I'm like, why haven't we been talking about this? And I feel like, we do talk about, youth sports it's really bad right now with the injuries. Like you said, if you're playing hockey, it's most of it's all year round. You're playing, sometimes basketball, baseball, football. Yeah. Like my son does 7-on-7. It's not contact, but you're still doing all those movements, and
don't get me wrong. I think the benefits of playing sports way outweigh the risks.
Right.
I mean, we can start talking about childhood obesity, tech neck, and some of the things that I see on the other side of the coin of kids, that are sedentary and don't move enough. So it kind of has to be that Goldilocks, like you're not overdoing it.
Not too
but you're not underdoing
Yeah.
it. You do want to, and again, that's where playing multiple sports is ideal because you're using usually different body parts. Like, Gabe plays soccer, which is mostly lower body, and then he plays baseball, which is mostly upper body.
Right.
So it's a nice
balance.
It's a nice balance. But unfortunately, as you get higher up in the competition, the coaches, they say they want multi-sport athletes, but they don't really always make that easy.
Right.
They're not really accommodating with like, okay, well, you can miss practice because you have a game with your other sport, or okay, you came in late because you were coming from baseball. We understand. Some coaches are cool and some coaches are not. And I get it, but it's makes it tough for the kids to make that decision.
Right. They have to make a choice because what I'm finding out with college is you can only play one sport. So if my son wouldn't have stopped baseball this year, he could have played baseball and football at a college. But a lot of them are like, no, because you're still training.
You're still training
all year round with these sports.
And at least when you're training, you're working on those foundational, hopefully, if the training is what it should be, you're working on those things that are going to help your performance and are going to help prevent injury.
Right.
Because you're working on fundamentals, you're working on foundation, you're working on, those types of things. And again, that's the benefit of playing a single sport at that level, because now you've got this comprehensive program,
right,
as opposed to playing a single sport when you're 13 or 12, when all you're doing is playing, unless you're conscientious enough to have them go through a strength and conditioning program, with a qualified person. That's
right.
the other thing too. I've seen,
don't go to Uncle Joe.
I've seen some, train wrecks.
Right.
Fortunately, there's a lot of really good ones. And unfortunately, there are some people that are not really qualified to do what they're doing. It can actually lead to more injury. So I've actually gotten patients coming from some of these programs. And I'm like, what?
Where did you go before?
So, but, and that was one of the things I really liked about the Riverhounds program when Gabe was there. They had a strength and conditioning coach who was this, same as the professionals and, and all the team, all the levels, not just the highest teams. Like they all got it. And, I think that is really important that a lot of these club sports need to start acknowledging that
right.
they want their kids.
Especially in high school, because when you go to college, we went to some college visits and they have strength and conditioning coaches and they don't just have one.
Oh yeah.
They might have a main one, but then they have a bunch of other ones that are sitting there watching what you're doing. And they have these like cameras when you're weightlifting to show like your strength and where it's so like advanced.
There's a lot of technology now that helps.
Yeah. Right.
You really pinpoint where these problems are.
Yeah. And it's, talking about rehabilitation, it's a lot of people, I think, I'm saying this for myself. Talking to you right here now, Martine, I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't think I was eligible because I just thought it was just, arthritis. But now that you really, showed me, I'm like, just go in. Maybe you'll find some relief. What are we waiting for?
Well, and I think that is a big misconception. People think you have to be injured and injured badly at that sometimes to go to PT, but you don't. And you can actually go in a preventative type.
Right. Even if you're not really hurting, but you know something's wrong.
Yeah. If you're like, hey, even if your child is going up to the next level, or even if you want to start a new activity, and not get hurt. Pickleball is all the rage, but the pickleball injuries are like,
you can get hurt.
Oh my gosh.
I was going to say, I'm going to just
think it's safe, but like even yoga, you think like, oh, that's, but like sometimes you could get, like if you try to push your body to do something it's not ready to do, you can actually get hurt. So, and
you try to keep up with everybody when you're doing stuff.
And you're
like, my body, I can do this. I used to be able to do this. And I think that's the hardest part of
Right. And my goal anyway, is to keep people doing as much as they can, as pain-free as they can, for as long as they can.
Right.
There is so much research out there now about longevity and, mortality rates, and they're associated with, physical activities. What is your grip strength? Can you get off the floor just using one hand
That's so
easily?
Funny you said that. I couldn't open a jar.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, my
grip strength is associated with mortality rate. So, but it sneaks up on you, as we get older, like you just stop being able to do these things and you just chalk it up to being older.
Yes.
And that's not always the case. There's nothing out there that says that you have to stop doing things that you enjoy doing. You can come in and see if there's something you can do to have it fixed. And like I said, we get people of all ages, all levels of activity, all varying degrees of arthritis and this and that.
Oh my God.
There's
always a light at the end of the tunnel.
And if you go through it and it doesn't help, at least, you tried everything.
Right.
Because I had a patient come in who was, she's like, I'm scheduled for back surgery, but I'm in so much pain. I need you to get me through until I can have the surgery. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, have you had PT yet? She's like, no. And I'm like, well, why are you going to surgery? She's like, well, they said I needed, my back's a mess and I have this wrong and that wrong.
Why are you trying to
She came for 6 weeks and is pain-free.
Oh my God.
Does not need surgery.
I feel like I'm going to need knee replacement. So I don't want to.
You might, but like, you know, when
So you might
like tomorrow, hopefully, right? You know, I mean, a lot of people do and a lot of people don't.
Right. So NovaCare Rehabilitation, how many locations are there?
A lot.
I was going to ask.
I don't even know.
Okay.
Because
So you're in other states because I'm nationwide.
Yes, we are national and we are under different, you know, it's not just Select Medical's our parent company. So you might know us as Joiner. You might know us as NovaCare, Select. We have all different names depending on where you are in the country. And we purchased Keystone Rehab several years ago. So all of those are now NovaCare. So in McMurray, there's actually 2 of us.
Oh,
we're in the same parking lot.
Oh, that's
my friend Judy runs the South Clinic. And then I'm over in the North.
What is your location?
It's right in Waterdam Plaza behind the old El Camp.
Well, if somebody is looking to set up an appointment to see you, what's the website or call?
Yeah, it's just novacare.com. You can even schedule online. So like I said, I'm at McMurray North, but you can always put your zip code in and it'll show you where the closest one is. It also shows what each clinician does. So like if you're looking for a Dorsa V test, I'm the only one in this area. I think the closest one is Allison Park.
No, what is that, huh?
That's the test I was telling you about with the sensor.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe I should.
I mean, come in. Oh,
I should have done it before.
Yeah,
so
me too.
You could evaluate me right on the air.
Right? Yeah, maybe we should do one from my clinic. We could do the Dorsa V test.
Yes.
Yeah, so just you can call the clinic or you can schedule online. Like I said, you can have a script or not, depending on your insurance. If you're not even sure, you can speak to the therapist if you're like, I don't even know if this would help. This is the situation, you know, and then we can go from there. And everybody's different. Like you don't have to come 3 times a week always. You know, it just really depends on what you're looking for. Like I said, some people come in and they just get a few pro exercises. Same thing with athletes, you know, if you're like in the off season and you want them to make the most out of their off season, you know, go to a professional that can actually evaluate them and say, okay, this is what you should be doing.
Keep you healthy, to
help prevent injury. Now, obviously, not all injuries are preventable. Like I said, you're going to have traumatic collisions. You're going to have freak, things that just happen. You're going to slip, whatever. But the non-traumatic ones, the overuse ones, you can actually, try and prevent those, with specific training. And I think, too, it helps with the kids when another person other than the parent tells them,
yes,
this is what you need to do.
I'm fine. Anytime you ask high school kids, you're like, how are you feeling? I'm fine. Fine. I'm like, no, they don't want to talk about it. And it's, what I really find too is that, stretching your muscles because they get so tight, especially when you're lifting weights.
Stretching is important, especially at this age because they are growing, but again, mobility without stability is just as bad. So, somebody who stretches all the time but doesn't do any strengthening, they're just as likely to get injured as the person that is strong but doesn't stretch. True. So it is that balance. But, like I said, it's a fun group to work with. And, I think too, a lot of them wind up coming out better than they went in, because, think about it. I have some kids that can't stand on one foot without wobbling around. If you're a pitcher, you're standing on a mound and you can't stand on one foot.
Right.
Like, don't you think that's going to affect your accuracy and your power? So once they start seeing how this actually translates into performing better, velocity, everyone wants velocity, when they're pitching and stuff. But where do you think it comes from? It doesn't just come from your arm.
Right.
It comes from the whole chain. Obviously you have to have, mechanics as well, but like your whole chain. So if your ankle's weak and it's rolling, when you go to,
on that mound,
and some of these mounds are, it's going to affect you. And if your shoulder blade is, doing weird things and, that's going to affect your accuracy and your power. So,
right.
And that goes for any sport. There's a lot of, if you're jumping, all these like basketball, volleyball, gymnastics, you have to jump and land and you're not stable when you land, that's eventually going to catch up with you.
That's so true. Oh my gosh, I've learned so much, Martine.
Oh, good.
And I'm like, all right, maybe I need to go in and get evaluated because, you put it on the
hurts.
right, and you put it on the back burner. But I'm just so excited. Is there anything else you would like to talk to the listeners and the viewers about?
Yeah, I think
Cover
I
everything.
think we covered everything. I think the take home message is just listen to the body. Don't rush back. Too soon. Seek professional advice.
Right. And see
If you're
somebody
unsure.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had so many people come in and they bought this brace and that tool and done these they've done all these things on their own, and they wasted all this time and all this money when they could have just come in and been shown right off.
Right.
And trust me, I don't ever want to go anywhere I don't have to go because my schedule is crazy, and like trying to fit anything in is like, oh God.
But your body is
But if you don't,
Yeah.
if you neglect it, it catches up with you on the back end.
So true. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Nova Care Rehabilitation, for sponsoring this episode today. I'm just so delighted to have you, and I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to the listeners and the viewers, because this is so important, because youth sports is really, it's getting pretty bad with the injuries, and you don't want to have that the rest of your life. So, stop at Nova Care, you look it up, go on their website. But I thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This was another episode of Spill With Me, Jenny D. Take care.
Come spill